Hello everybody, Chris here, and in this video I'm going to be showing you guys how you can write text on the side of a building even in a moving shot using a combination of 3D text tools and the Planner Tracker node. So in order to use these fancy 3D effects, we should go over to the Fusion tab, make sure that you already have a clip dropped onto the timeline that you want to edit from. So on the Fusion tab, you're going to see two nodes by default for your clip, Media In and Media Out. So Media In is going to be the base clip that you are trying to edit, and then Media Out is the final output. So in between there, we need to add in a bunch of nodes in order to generate the effect of having 3D text track on the side of the building. So the first thing we're going to need to do is to use a Planner Tracker in order to find what position the building is at any given frame during this clip. So if I right click on the line between Media In and Media Out, and then I go to Add Tool, Tracking, and Planner Tracker, it will add in a Planner Tracker between Media In and Media Out. At the very minimum, you need Media In to feed into Planner Tracker to use as the data, since the tracker needs to be able to see the building in a sense in order to track it across the screen. Next, we need to zoom in, find whatever building you want. Like your shot might just have the side of one building, or it might be a city view like this. So I'm going to use this mid-sized skyscraper over here. And while having the Planner Tracker node selected in Media Out, we have access to these pen tools in order to create the shape that we are trying to track. So the shape is obviously going to be the rectangle roughly of this building. So I'm going to select the area I'm going to put the text on. So that's going to be this blue box here. So I'm going to left click to set one point. You'll notice that there are Bezier curve handles if you need to make these points curve. But because this is a rectangle shape, I'm not going to bother with that. So I'm going to left click to kind of set the edge of the blue over here. I'm going to go down here, set another point, go to the left, set one more point. And then up here, I'm going to close the loop by clicking on the first. So if I hit play, you'll be able to see in this shot that for the most part, it's a very simple movement, just a drone going down in the sky. So the main thing we want to track here is just the translation of the building as it moves and adjusts its position. You can adjust the motion type if you need to track more than that, but the more complicated your motion type is, kind of would say the more error prone it is. So if you do a simple translation, you're more likely to get consistently good results the first time. If you need rotation or scale or things like that, you can bump up the motion type, but you may have to play around with it a little bit more in order to get good looking final results. So for now, I'm going to change the motion type to translation since this is a really simple movement. Next, if you are referencing, I created this box for the tracker on frame 0. If you created it on a different frame, then you should go to that frame and set the reference time to that frame. But it's already set to frame 0 by default. So all I really need to do at this point is go to the reference time, 0 frame, and track to the end. So that's going to be creating a keyframe for every frame here. And hopefully this box should be able to stay relatively centered on this building. So let's go ahead and hit track to end. And you can see that using computer magic, it's able to stay on top of that box. So this is going to create the data we need to feed into the 3D text node to adjust its position across time. If you notice that anything weird happens at the end or the start of your tracking, and that could happen for reasons like it already fading to black, or if there's a sudden jump cut, what you can do if the ending frames are kind of bad is you can use the trim to end tool to remove some of the bad data. So if you do that, it will remove the keyframes that come after this point, which means after hitting frame 319 here, it's just going to stay in that position for the last 8 frames. That might be preferable if you notice that there's some random jump. Another case where that happens is if the object actually leaves the screen, you might want to trim the end keyframes there. But overall, this is looking pretty good. If I play it back one more time, it stays on top of things. So the next thing we need to do is create a planar transform. You can do that with one button click. You just need to hit Create Planar Transform in the inspector. And then this is going to actually be the data that we use in conjunction with the 3D text node. So we need to create a 3D text here. So I can click that on the shortcut bar. And anything that is a 3D generated effect needs to be connected to a 3D renderer. so it can be rendered out to the 2D that video actually is. With the render 3D node now, we want to connect that to the planar transform. The planar transform will adjust that rendered result. And then we need to combine this with the original media clip. So I'm going to right click, add tool, composite, merge. And this is important. We need to connect either the media in or the planar tracker to the merge. The planar tracker isn't actually needed once you have got the planar transform node, so I'll just disconnect it there. And the media in node, importantly, needs to be the first one to connect into the merge node. Whichever is the orange one is going to be the furthest in the back layer. So the text needs to layer on top of the video because we want it to show in front of the video. So this should be the green connector here. And then with these two connected in the merge, we need to feed that to the final media out. That's our node's set up. So the next thing we need to do is edit the 3D text. So I'm going to open that up as the left preview window up here. And let's go ahead and write some default text in. I'll call it hello here. So the next thing we're going to want to do is to roughly center this text on the planar tracker area. So we've got to move this text over there. And we can do that in the 3D text preview window by using this transform gizmo. So I'm going to bring that over there and I will move it up as well. Okay, so obviously the text is too big right now, but I want to make sure that the tracking is actually working. So let's go ahead and hit play to make sure that the text is roughly moving with the building as well, which it should because the planar transform node is adjusting it. Okay, and it seems to be because although the buildings are moving up, the L there is still kind of being aligned with the bottom of that building. So that seems to be a good sign there. Next, we can go ahead and lower the size. So I'll go over to the layout tab here, and we'll take the size and scale it way down to something like 0.1, I suppose, maybe 0.15. And then adjust the transform a little bit more in the 3D preview window. Okay, and let's hit play and see if it's still good. Okay, that's good. It's still staying centered in that section of the building. You notice it's not dropping down or it's not raising up because it's moving in the same fashion that the building is. So that's exactly what we're looking for. Next, if we want, we can make these text characters vertical. That might make more sense on a vertical building like this. So I'm going to take the direction and make it top down and adjust the transform one more time. So if we want to make the text appear top down instead of left to right, we could change the direction and make that top down here. I also find it works pretty well if you just manually do it with the text. So we can create new lines for the text characters here by typing it like this and then moving it down here, whichever you prefer. So if we want to make the text vertical now for a vertical building, you can do it by changing the direction from automatic to top down. And then with the text, we'll need to recenter it on the building, of course. Okay, so when the text is made vertical like this, you may still want to lower the size down a little bit. Note that if you go too crazily far, you might get some clipping, so just be a little careful about that. So size of 0.11 may work here. And I can move it up here with the building. If you make your text too small, though, it does give you a little bit of clipping. So it seems like the limit is about 0.8 there or so. Not sure if there's a way to work around that. So if you are trying to make really, really tiny text on your video, you may want to limit it to a few characters. If you made it so small anyway, it would be impossible to see to begin with. So I'm going to bump that up a little bit more. And maybe we limit it to a few characters. So we could say ELL. Maybe like the company name, and then increase the size back up a bit, reposition it, and bump the size up a little more so it still actually shows there. Okay, so at this point, we're pretty much done. So we can zoom back out, play it, and make sure that the text characters are tracking across time. So we can go back to frame 0, play it back, and make sure that the text is staying on the building like it should. And it seems to be tracking pretty well. So at a very basic level, that'll do. You'll notice at the end that the text won't fade with the original video clip. So if you want it to fade out there, you'll have to make an adjustment in the nodes in order to lower the text opacity to lower with that. So we can play it back one more time and make sure that the text is staying up there on the building like it's supposed to. And at a very basic level, that seems to be working. So for instance, if you wanted to use Asian characters rather than English, you could either change the font or install a language pack on your computer. So this isn't actually typing in Japanese. I mean, those may be Japanese characters, but really this is just a dingbats font, so it is completely meaningless. Alternatively, you could add in a language pack to your computer and just type in a different language from the beginning. So if we want this here, we can take it, scale it down. We can see that this font doesn't have the same clipping as the other one did, which is good. Now what I was finding with this particular font was that a better way of controlling the direction rather than using top-down was actually to make this automatic and then use Enter to create lines for each character in the text. And then we can increase the line spacing to get them to be as far spread apart as we need them to be. Recenter them on the building and maybe lower the size down a bit as well. Okay, that looks pretty good there. And now we've changed the characters there. Maybe if we want 3 different characters, we can just take the text there and make it ELO. Looks a bit cooler. So finally, to make the text stand out, you may want to add in some lighting effects. So one you can add in is light rays. So you can do that using nodes as well. So I'm going to right click. Well, actually, I'll have the planar transform selected. I'll right click on the line and then I'll add tool. And go to Effect and Raise. And because we had it selected like that, it pops right in there between Transform and Merge. You can see that light rays are emitting from the text on the side of the building. So it kind of looks like someone actually put lights up there. And with this, we can control the direction we want these light rays to go. So there'll be this Transform adjuster. We can move this to control the position where the light rays are coming from. Maybe we kind of center them on the building. So now we can go ahead and hit play and see the video play back with the lighting effect on there. Note that we don't really need to adjust the position of the rays transform, the center point for the light, because as the light sources change their position, the rays will be generated based on their position relative to this source point. So that creates a pretty fun effect for us. We can ramp it up if we want. So if we want more weight, we can do that. Control the decay a bit if you want it to be more concise, less short, like shorter rays. And we could ramp up the exposure if we want the effect to be way overkill. But I think it would be better to make it a little bit more normal. So we'll just leave that as an exposure of 1.0. So in a nutshell, that's how we can take an object in a moving shot, add text to it, and make sure that that text tracks the object across time, so it actually looks a lot more like the text is actually written on that object. So I've been Chris, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in my future DaVinci Resolve 16 content.